Hey, good morning. It's good to be with you on this Friday as we continue walking together through the book of Acts. Today, we're going to be looking at Acts chapter 18. We're going to see Paul in Corinth. And now, this is, if you read through the Bible, you're going to see that Paul has a very special and unique relationship with the Corinthians. His letters to Corinth, 1st and 2nd, are beautiful letters. A lot of stuff there. You're going to see Paul has a very deep pastoral relationship with the people here, because he gets incredibly honest with them. Some harsh words are said sometimes. Paul, you're going to see the depth of relationship that Paul has with the people here, if you were to keep reading to Corinthians, in a way that it's just very deep and personal. So we're going to see his time here in Corinth today. So let's read Acts 18, 1 through 17. After Paul left Athens, and after this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he found a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Pricilla, because Claudius had ordered all the Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them, and because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them, and they worked together. By trade, they were tent makers. Every Sabbath, he would argue in the synagogue and would try to convince the Jews and the Greeks. When Silas and Timothy arrived from Macedonia, Paul was occupied with proclaiming the word, testifying to the Jews that the Messiah was Jesus. When they opposed and reviled him in protest, he shook the dust from his clothes and said to them, "Your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles." Then he left the synagogue and went to the house of a man named Titus Justus, a worshiper of God. His house was next door to the synagogue. Crispus, the official of the synagogue, became a believer in the Lord, together with all his household. And many of the Corinthians who heard Paul became believers and were baptized. He references this section here in the beginning of 1 Corinthians. One night, the Lord said to Paul in a vision, "Do not be afraid, but speak and do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will lay a hand on you to harm you, for there are many people in this city who are my people." He stayed there a year and 6 months, teaching the word of God among them. But when Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, the Jews made a united attack on Paul. They brought him before the tribunal. They said, "This man is persuading people to worship God in ways that are contrary to the law." Just as Paul was about to speak, Gallio said to the Jews, "If this were a matter of crime or serious villainy, I would be justified in accepting the complaint of you Jews. But since it's a matter of questions about words and names of your own law, see to it yourselves. I do not wish to be the judge of these matters." And he dismissed them from the tribunal. Then all of them seized Synesius, an official of the synagogue, and beat him in front of the tribunal. But Gallio paid no attention to any of these things. You see here that Rome, I mentioned this before in my sermons, that Rome really doesn't care about religious matters. They really don't care. If you go back and look at the crucifixion of Jesus, the charge against Jesus was that he was basically, they made it as though he was trying to be a revolutionary and become emperor, become king. That was, as the religious leaders said, "We have no king but Caesar." So, remember, Pilate had above Jesus' head the king of the Jews. So, Gallio doesn't care one lick about internal religious quarrels among the Jews and now the Christians. He doesn't care. All Rome is worried about is, are you paying your taxes? If you're paying your taxes, Rome does not care what you do religiously. Just pay your taxes. If you want to, they thought Judaism was weird. They weren't real fond of Christians, particularly, we start seeing it now, but just pay your taxes. That's all Rome wants. So, Paul's in Corinth. You see, he stays here for a year and a half. He stays here for 6 months. That's a long time. That's 18 months. Used to be, back when I was doing youth ministry, the average length of stay of a youth pastor was about 18 months. Now that's lengthened some now, but 18 months is a long time. That's a long time to be somewhere. So Paul really was their pastor for this season, and we see him arguing as he does, and arguing. I mean, I guess arguing is the right word, but it's really more of a religious debate. He's going to the synagogue and explaining. So notice, okay, let's contrast this with yesterday in Athens. Paul didn't necessarily argue from the scriptures with the Athenians because they were religious but not Jewish. So in Corinth, he goes to the synagogue and argues from the scriptures. You see, once again, how Paul is so gifted at understanding the context of the place that he's in and presenting the gospel in a way that makes sense of that context. He doesn't change the message. Paul is always consistent with the message, but Paul will change the context or the way he does it based upon the people that he's with. I tell this, what's today? It's today is what, the 29th of September. I'm going to be in a few weeks, starting on October 9th, preaching a camp meeting on the Gulf Coast. I'll be, in fact, I hope I can. I'm going to try to do Rooted when I'm doing New Prospect camp meeting in a couple of weeks. I don't know. It just depends on the internet down there and things such as that. So I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to do it the week of the 9th through the, the 14th, 15th, back up to my math, 13th, I guess, whatever that 9th is a Monday through that Friday. But when I preach a camp meeting, good old-fashioned Methodist camp meeting revels, I don't typically wear my collar just because collars are more formal. When I'm preaching an informal camp meeting, I typically just wear a polo. Sometimes I'll wear a tie, or a button-up shirt. I've never wanted my outfit to be a distraction from the message. Paul understands where the people are and presents the gospel in a way that makes sense to them. So here, he's arguing with the Jews using the scriptures. And of course, we see the typical thing here. Some are saved, some are baptized, and eventually conflict is stirred up. But I always like how the notion of being tent makers here. Paul was a tent maker. He worked with Pricilla and Aquila, and they worked together and they formed this relationship. And I think this is, in our lives, some of the most important relationships in our life are the people we work with, because you spend as much time with your coworkers as you do anybody. You're spending 40 hours a week with them. You're spending a lot of time each day with your coworkers. And those should be relationships that we should nurture. Those are relationships that we have great influence in. Those are sacred moments. See, we sometimes make this distinction that the most sacred times in our week are Sunday morning, and they are. Sunday mornings are wonderful times of worship. I love waking up on Sunday and get ready for worship. But let's also remember the sacredness of Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, Thursday afternoon. Our day-to-day relationships with our coworkers are hugely important, because as we work, as we do common tasks, as we do the day-to-day things of life, these relationships are strengthened. So if we're in a context where we work with fellow believers, goodness, think of the people that you can work with, that you can pray with, that you can pray for, that you can walk together through life for. That's a beautiful thing, friends. But if you're in a context where you may be the only Christian, you can nurture those relationships and form deep and abiding friendships and relationships with the people that you work with. And in that, people can see Jesus in you. I think this included about Paul and Priscilla and Aquila working together to show us the sacredness of work. The sacredness of work. I always say that if you go back and look at the creation story in Genesis, God gave Adam and Eve work before the fall. Work was not a consequence of the fall. Work was how God made us to be. Now, post the fall, work got harder. God told Adam, by the sweat of your brow, your work. So work got hard. But God made us for purpose. God made us for purpose. And so attend to those work relationships in your life. Work hard in the task that God's given you. My parents always taught me hard work covers a multitude of sins. If you work hard, it goes a long way in life. So attend to those relationships. Be listening. Be kind. Be speaking. Do your job well. Do your job well. Colossians 3:17. And all you do in word or deed, do it to the glory of God the Father through Jesus Christ the Son. If your task today is menial, do it for Jesus. If your task today involves a lot of praise, a lot of glory, do it for Jesus. Your job, your day-to-day work is a gift from God. It's a gift from God. Do it well. Do it with joy. Do it with purpose. Do it for his glory. Nurture those relationships. Paul was a tent maker. Paul worked hard in his day-to-day life. And God was honored in that. He was honored in the relationship he had with Priscilla and Aquila. God was honored in the way that Paul did his work, and he was honored in the way that Paul spoke for the gospel. So today, work hard. Work hard, do well, love well. Attend to those relationships. So let's always honor the sacredness of work. It's a gift to us. And let's do it well and for God. Hey, thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday morning as we continue with Paul's missionary journeys. Have a great day.